Yeah, my name is Peyman. I'm founder of FAIRBLOCK, and we primarily working on confidential stable coins. So if you want to make like a normal payment on chain as an institution, as a normal trader, a user, ideally your payments shouldn't be leaked on chain. Whatever you are doing shouldn't be leaked, just like normal world. And that's like what we are trying to do: make it seamless and fast and like compliant, and passing it to Radar.
Yeah, so um, glad to be sitting here. And my background is technical. So I did a PhD in cryptography. I realized what modern cryptography has been doing is really enabling big tech. Everything that we've been doing, encryption, in speeding up, um, you know, TLS sessions, things like that. There's clearly like two segments to cryptography. One is helping big tech, and one is empowering individuals. And those two are actually quite different. And that's why I left academia to join crypto. And I've designed and shipped privacy protocols for on-chain assets. Um, but these days, by trade, I'm a VC. So there's that. Oh yeah, my name is Wei.
Hey guys, this is Cos. I guess right now in with Invisible Garden, we just wrap up a 3-week like residency with privacy-focused developers, cryptographers coming from the U.S., China, Europe. That was fun, quite fun. And yeah, in terms of context, I found that Ethereum Venezuela has always been like privacy-centric in the face of great powers, so it's kind of tricky. And also helping out with the Economic Space Agency building post-capitalist protocols, which is fun. Yeah, I just fully anonymized, which is fun. Nice.
Hello, can you hear me? So my name is Victor John. I'm the president of the Swarm Foundation, which is a kind of a spin-off from the EF. It was one of the first teams to that spawned into a different foundation back in 2020, and so Swarm is usually discussed under the label of decentralized storage protocol. This is going to peer-to-peer storage protocol that has a very strong privacy features. And this is how it feeds into this kind of cypherpunk vision. So maybe we can talk about these details and how it comes together with other solutions in this panel.
Okay, I guess we can make it a little bit fun, and yeah, yeah. And obviously we are all always talking about cypherpunk values and like this and that and privacy, right? But what's cypherpunk to you? Is it like something like a series, like a just a Mr. Robot series, something for like teenagers in campus, or does it really affects you on a daily life basis as like an adult? Does it saves you money? Is it for big guys to like? What does it matter to you personally?
Yeah. So to me, I think there's a struggle between provide sovereignty, privacy, kind of self-custody of assets to individuals. That's to me the maybe if you were to distill like the core values of the cypherpunks, I would say, right? I think if we have cryptography, then we don't have to have intermediaries in many situations for communication, for data in transit, data at rest, right, and more recently for assets in movements and asset at rest. And it's really about empowering individuals to achieve whatever their goals may be. And I think right there's always this tension between empowering individuals and kind of empowering nation states. And I think that part is where the nuance come in. But to me, yeah, always at the core is it's how do we give the maximum amount of power to individuals against surveillance, against unnecessary information collection, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I gotta disclose. I'm not technical. I got into Web3 around 2010, so like pretty early on. I mean, there was no Web3, that wasn't coin. But I got in from the grassroots, like political activism kind of things. So for me, it's an everyday logic of being cypherpunk, being like slightly loner punk, or like okay, yeah, the technology, let's be optimistic, but in that logic, like my life has been, how do we use these technologies? It's really difficult to get the people on the ground, journalists, activists, etc., to actually tap into these technologies from a practical way. So that's always been my struggle. Last, like I don't know, advocating for maybe since I was underage, like 25 years, maybe. So it's like since forever. That's a struggle. I think is being addressed. I think this is the one of the best places to be to have those difficult conversations on how we had this very high ideas and technologies and how we ground them into actually being used by the people that are at the forefront or like having being cypherpunk from the everyday perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so Cypherpunk is definitely the movement I identify most with, and I would really emphasize the kind of the social impact um, yeah, aspect of it, how it imagines that privacy and all these private interactions can actually shield, protect individuals and empower individuals against maybe state actors, other actors kind of impeding on their liberties, and what kind of social change this can have as a result. I mean, in general, I would say that maybe it's kind of philosophical underpinning. Maybe it's a bit provocative question. Maybe I just kind of open it up anyway. So how about you think of interaction between humans, individuals, or okay, maybe even not even humans, just AI agents, kind of being generally, if it's voluntary and well informed, it's kind of the definition of value creation. The best you can kind of get out of any system is to enhance this kind of value creation the most possible, the best possible way, which means that you must kind of uh, yeah, you must improve information. So basically, you must yeah, cater for the information freedom, and also kind of maybe make the economic interactions between people, the freest and the most wild possible way. So basically, eliminate the four F words. So friction, fraud, fallacy, and force. Yeah, basically, and any kind of direction, any technical solution that goes into these directions will enhance value creation in general, and therefore kind of has a positive impact on society. What do you think of that?
Okay, perfect. So my next question is about, obviously we didn't have a great adoption for privacy technologies so far, and there is multiple kind of technologies. There's different problems, and but where do you see the actual blocker? Is it more of a psychological thing that like a normal person in the streets doesn't really care about privacy, doesn't affect it like their day-to-day problems that much? Is it because of technology? ZK proofs are like not that fast, or like all of these privacy projects are very inaccessible? Um, like where do you see the actual blockers? Like what if you want to choose like one problem that should be solved in next 5 years? What should be?
Okay, I think I can answer this. So I think maybe this kind of I approach it from a higher level. So I think that there's maybe a general kind of confusion about private data and private and calculating with private data. So often people mention, like, I don't know, medical data is kind of the best example of that. So people are very against the idea of having their private and medical data or some sort of health related personal data exposed to the public. At the same time, would really like to use the aggregate statistics or aggregate things that calculate from many people's private data, personal data. And so what we need to solve with this is kind of how to use personal data in a way that that information doesn't leak, to be honest, and also most people can actually benefit from the aggregate result of process data like that. And this ultimate conflict is also not resolved on the conceptual level. So it's not clear what it means that people want to know, for example, the provenance of some high-level data, like aggregate data, whether the DAS was included. I mean, this also kind of maybe translates to the same problem in kind of AI, where the LLMs can include some personal data or personal information about you. But still, you want the provenance information about that, but at the same time, you don't want them explicitly expose your that it's about you. It's a bit of a conflicting or on the conceptual level. So if any one of you can shed light on how they imagine is solved in the near future, it would be amazing.
So maybe let's do a quick show of hands. How many of you here use Telegram? Okay, a lot of hands. How many of you here use WhatsApp? Okay, a little bit less. What about Signal? Oh, great. Well, we are at the Cypherpunk Congress. Well, it looks like everyone uses all three apps. Um, so WhatsApp recently implemented a solution for you to use AI without actually having your data being exposed. And they use this very complex and engineered, very well engineered system that use trusted execution environments to effectively like, run AI inference over the data that they have on you, um, and it all works with pretty good UX. And this was audited by I think recently by Trail Bits. So um, since the title of the panel is from infrastructure to apps, I think really the end users will use apps. The original group of Cypherpunks are all developers. They all like computer programmers, and they're power users, right? And so if we build tools that are only for power users, they're not going to reach the most amount of people. And so privacy is essential. Privacy needs to be a key feature of these apps. And today, all these applications need to kind of go all the way to implement privacy, right? And I think to really get privacy everywhere, we need to build better tools, but also have these product builders realize that privacy is a key feature. Maybe this is through regulation, actually, right? That things need to be encrypted at rest. Maybe this is through just better tools. But really, the problem with over the past, I would say 20, 30 years is just it's really hard to build privacy into things, right? Application builders don't really know how to use it unless you give them a really good interface. There's still no way for you to build a good end-to-end encrypted messaging app unless you have the knowledge of how to use the current state-of-the-art cryptography, like of ratcheting encryption and for example like the MLS protocol, right? And there's definitely still a big gap despite decades of work.
I mean, I've been in situations where my mom has been a liability, so that's just communicating with her can be tricky. We had a closing ceremony to our residency yesterday, and we had the people from Peanut. Peanut has like been on the, you look into the DevConnect chat, a lot of people are asking like, how do I deal with Argentinian currency? How do I do payments? And it's a trade-off. It's like to pay locally on like Mercado Pago, scanning QR code, they had to KYC. So we did a peanut roast, and we asked them a bunch of like privacy questions. I was like, hey, I don't know. People were going from like, when can I sign up as a Chinese citizen? And it's like, well, you will still have to KYC. That's not really the greatest question, but like, where's the code? Where is this? Where is that? Eventually, we came kind of to this logic of like KYC is the real enemy, regardless is the trade-off of usability, good UX, like how to adoption, like this is different kinds of things versus privacy. I think that's one logic, but we had a great opportunity with one of the most complex enemies of privacy being out there and being trending all the time, which is AI. We had somebody come over to the conference and being like, oh, I actually had an AI in my pocket recording absolutely everything, and then summarizing what happened here and what should I listen to and what should I follow up with. And we were like, what the fuck, bro? Like, can you like, and it's a friend that I met like a couple of times. I was like, well, maybe, I don't know, like, I don't feel comfortable talking to you like anymore because it's like becoming quite strange. So having that presence in the room, that elephant in the room, really allows to talk about privacy more often to like common people, like everyday people, because now it's everywhere. Now it's becoming a thing. Now it's not only big government listening, it's like everyday kind of like people. There was a massive attack concert here in Buenos Aires, and they were like doing the thing of face scanning people at the front. And people were kind of like celebrating and chilling. I was like, well, okay. I noticed some people talking about it, but it kind of got normalized really fast, which is scary. But it poses very interesting like conversation sparks. So anyway, it's a great opportunity just to.
So last question. There is ideologies in terms of like if we should fight the governments. Obviously, everyone wants to not have a surveillance government, right? If we should have the best application with privacy, nobody's opposing it. But there's reality as well, right? There is like performance issues, there is compliance issues, there is the use case design issues, UX issues. And the question is that when we are designing applications, privacy preserving application, is it a race that we only have 5 years left to make something that is pretty good privacy, or we should take like a more slower approach and spend like the next like 20 years to make like the most robust mechanism that governments doesn't have any backdoors or any controls, and like it's good enough, like it's completely perfect. Like very like, is it cutting corners? Is it like we are running out of time?
Very good question. So let me break this down. So whenever we talk about privacy, it's very important to talk about what type of privacy. Like, so privacy is usually for information, right? What type of information are we talking about? What are the possible categories out there? Well, the most important one I would say is communication privacy, right? So that's like all the messaging protocols are for, and you want end-to-end encryption for that, right? So when I communicate with the Paymon, right, there shouldn't be any intermediaries, right? It should be like in-person conversation. And then there's data privacy, right? So your health information with your doctors. Well, your doctors may share that with other healthcare providers, right? So for your data privacy, there's what data that is, and maybe there's data custodians, and we don't want data brokers to sell that data, right? For example, on social media sites. And then there's on-chain asset privacy, and that has really turned around the notion of, oh, we need intermediaries for these transactions, right? So Bitcoin showed us we don't need intermediaries. Anybody in the world can transact, and that's, it turns out it's very, very hard to get privacy for these on-chain assets, and that's, I think, right, we're at Ethereum conference, that's what we're all here for. And I would say that's a very, very different category. And over there, we have solutions, we have the technology, but really we don't have a social consensus on like, how do we get there? How do we protect individuals, but also be able to potentially deter malicious nation states? And then there's, for example, voting privacy. And that's, again, very different than all the other categories. And so we really have to look at each category differently. I would say for communication privacy, we have really, really good technical solutions. No backdoors. Governments are trying to get control of it. We should say no. Communication is freedom of speech. You cannot take that away from us, right? And for data privacy as well, I think GDPR is a step in the right direction, but maybe implemented incorrectly because everyone just clicked the banner, and it's actually really bad. So there's a lot of work, and I think for on-chain privacy, we're pretty nascent, like in terms of actual deployment of these protocols, in terms of TVL, in terms of like market share of privacy protocols, and voting privacy just in nascency. Most countries still do pen and paper ballots, right? How do you do like this, what is called coercion resistant voting, right, in an electronic manner? It's challenges everywhere, and it really depends on the type.
Yeah, so I agree very much. So some dimensions that are worth considering is, of course, what type of privacy in terms of what data it concerns. But also, kind of, I would just also like to separate between like the deployment of a technology and the kind of the maturity of the actual technological solution behind it. So, for example, I totally agree that communication privacy is kind of a solved problem, both in terms of anonymity of the parties, as well as the confidentiality of the content, of course, and also in case of like Swarm kind of implements messaging that also kind of mask any kind of metadata. So basically, it's zero leak protocols. And I also think that these are kind of ready to deploy and ready to be used, and there's no compromise. We should get on it. Of course, not to mention that if you have infiltration on your device, it's a totally different matter. But let's not talk about that. And when it comes to voting privacy, yeah. So for example, ZK is quite a beast. So it's a lot of complexity and stuff, and we really just and seeing all this ZK research is quite scary in terms of the usual very conservative space of cryptographic research. How it's deployed usually it's quite a conservative scene because for a reason. But I think, for example, with voting, you're right that it's nowhere near deployed, kind of any kind of a privacy voting protocol. But on the other hand, it's a very good solution for ZK. It's kind of a really feasible solution for zero knowledge. And as for home encryption, what's relevant for AI and this kind of personal medical data aggregation, I think it's really for the future to decide whether the current direction is correct. I'm really not sure, and I'm also not an expert on these fields. But yeah, so.
Well, Yeah. Oh my god. From the social perspective, not being technical, I think like yes, we're almost at that point that kind of like almost running out of time. I think it's just not building one thing or the other. It's just having these spaces where the people that are building these technologies meet and using the technology to communicate across like who's building, like using the technology to communicate online as well about these things. It's just like it needs to be cohesive. Like different groups are building different components for the same kind of logic. We need to be aligned into how we use these resources. If everybody's like fundraising from the same kind of like groups and then like building the same things from that, perspective, alignment, like modular approaches. Yes, having more of these conversations is super important. Shout out to Cypherpunk Congress. And thank you guys for what you guys been building. Yeah.
That's all. Thank you, guys.